Welcome to the Cognitive Behavioral Interventions for Trauma in Schools Teacher Education Program. My name is Sarah Dobeck-Troutman. I will be your presenter for today. I am a trained CBITS facilitator and I am a certified trauma professional. So we'll take just a few minutes for an introduction to the Cognitive Behavioral Interventions for Trauma in Schools program. It is typically referred to as CBITS. It is a school-based program focused on addressing student trauma. This means that this program usually takes place in the school setting and during the school day. It is an evidence-based program, which means it relies on research and data to be a results-driven program. It is available for students in grades 6 through 12 in groups of about 6 to 10 students at a time. It is a 10-week program consisting of weekly groups and individual sessions. The groups are typically 1 hour in length, and the individual sessions can vary. The group and individual sessions are usually held on the same day each week. The program is facilitated by a trained CBITS clinician, and it is utilized in school districts throughout the United States, so it is a national program. We're going to get started with looking at common reactions to stress or trauma. Keep in mind that these are the most common reactions we see. However, students can have their own unique reactions as well. The first one is having nightmares or trouble sleeping. When something really scary or upsetting happens, it usually takes students a while to figure out exactly what happened, what that means, and try to make sense of it all. After severe stress or trauma, students tend to keep thinking about what happened in order to digest it, just like your stomach has to work to digest a big meal. One of the ways that this can happen is by students having nightmares or trying to process it while they're trying to go to sleep. The classroom manifestations for this common reaction include fatigue and sleepiness during the day. The next common reaction is thinking about it all the time or reenacting it. This is another way for the students to digest what happened or try to make sense out of what happened to them. Just like having nightmares, thinking about the trauma all the time is a problem because it can make them feel upset and it can be very unpleasant for them. Classroom manifestations include trouble concentrating, tearfulness, and repetitive play around the theme of their trauma. The next common reaction is wanting to not think or talk about it. This is natural since it is upsetting to think about a past stress or trauma and can make someone feel all sorts of emotions. Avoiding a trauma memory can make things easier, but only for a little while. It is important at some point for the student to digest what happened, so while avoiding it sometimes makes sense, we do need them to set aside some time to digest it as well. This can happen in things like this program or individual therapy. The classroom manifestations you may see for this common reaction include trouble sitting still, constantly creating distractions, and in general just not wanting to talk about problems. The next common reaction is avoiding people, places, or things that make them think about it. Just like not wanting to talk about or think about the trauma, avoiding situations that remind the student of what happened to them can help them feel better at the moment. The problem is that it keeps them from doing normal things that are an important part of their lives. The classroom manifestations for this can be resistance to doing certain things or going certain places, especially without a clear explanation as to why, or also absenteeism because of avoidance of things on the way to school or of potentially something at school itself. Common reactions to stress or trauma continued. The next one is feeling scared for no reason. This can happen because the student might be remembering what happened to them or they're thinking about what happened. Other times it can happen because their body tends to stay in a state of fight or flight and is so tense at all the time that they just start beginning to feel scared. The classroom manifestation for this is getting upset easily, especially if there's no obvious reason why. The next common reaction is feeling crazy or out of control. This again tends to be from the student being in a continuous state of fight or flight, where they're experiencing chemicals flowing through their body and different emotions that they're not sure where they're coming from. And this can lead to them feeling like they are going crazy or they don't have control of their body and mind. This is a normal thing and can get better with therapy or programs. The classroom manifestations for this one again is getting upset easily. The next common reaction is not being able to remember parts of what happened. This happens to a lot of people. The stressful event can be so awful that their memory doesn't work the way it usually does. Sometimes it can get easier to remember later on, but sometimes we also see the memory continue to get harder for them to remember things. This can be frustrating, but it is really normal. There are no clear classroom manifestations for this particular reaction. However, you may have students who are continually saying, I don't remember that, or I don't remember this occurring, especially if you see them start to get emotional because they can't remember, because it can be very frustrating for them. The last one on this slide is having trouble concentrating at school or at home. With all of the nervousness that they're feeling and all the time they can spend thinking about what happened, it can be hard to concentrate on schoolwork or even on what friends, family, or teachers are saying to them. The classroom manifestations we see for this one are concentration problems, not finishing activities, or doing worse on schoolwork or tests. Continuing with common reactions to stress or trauma, the next one is being on guard to protect themselves or feeling like something bad is about to happen. After something bad happens to them, it can make sense to be prepared for another bad thing to happen. The problem with this is that the students can spend so much time waiting for the next bad thing to happen that they don't have the time or energy for other things in life. Also, it's scary for them to think something bad is always around the corner. The classroom manifestations we may see for this are that the student wants to face the door or have their back to the wall so they can see what is coming up to them and that nothing is sneaking up behind them. We also may see students who are just keeping really alert at all times. The next common reaction is jumping when there is a loud noise. This is one of the ways that their body says that it's prepared for action in case something else does happen. The classroom manifestation that we typically see for this is being startled easily. The next common reaction is feeling anger. Some people feel angry about the stress or the trauma that happened or about the things that happened afterward. Other people just feel angry all the time at everything and everybody. This is a very normal reaction to someone who's experienced a trauma. The classroom manifestations for this one, we may see increased fights with peers or being oppositional. And the last common reaction on this slide, feeling shame. Sometimes people are ashamed about what happened to them or how they acted. Even though it can be hard to believe for some, this can get better the more they talk about what happened and process what happened. If they keep it a secret, it is harder for the shame to go away. Classroom manifestations we may see with someone who's experiencing shame is withdrawal from peers, poor eye contact, or negative self-statements. And the last slide for the common reactions to stress or trauma, feeling guilt People can feel guilty about what happened or about something they did or did not do. Sometimes they blame themselves for things that they couldn't possibly control. They may also feel guilty for upsetting parents or caregivers. Guilty feelings can make it hard to talk about what happened. The classroom manifestation most common for this is negative self-statements. Another common reaction is feeling sadness, grief, or loss. Sometimes stressful events or traumas include losing someone close to them or losing something that is important to them. This can lead to feelings of sadness and being down and depressed. The classroom manifestations we see for this one include tearfulness, clinging to caregivers or teachers, and withdrawal from peers. The next one is feeling bad about themselves. Sometimes everything that they've experienced can make them feel really bad about themselves, like they're a bad person or that no one likes them. This makes it harder for them to be friendly or to have fun with others. The classroom manifestation we see for this is withdrawal from peers and negative self-statements. And finally, the last one is having physical health problems and complaints. Stress has an effect on their body. People sometimes get sick more often, or they may notice pain and discomfort more when they have been under a stress or a trauma. We know if the trauma is not discussed and processed, that this can continue on into adulthood, and we may see more common problems like heart disease, diabetes, and cancer for those who have had childhood trauma. In children, we typically see the classroom manifestations of the physical health complaints look most often like stomach aches, headaches, nausea, and body aches. This can also look like more trips to the school nurse, and I would also add the bathroom in there. And it can also add to lots of absenteeism for that student. Moving on to an explanation of the CBITS program. So it does work under the cognitive behavioral theory, which stresses the connection between thoughts, feelings, and actions. In CBITS, the focus is on how the experienced stress or trauma has impacted the student's thoughts, their feelings, and then consequently how that impacts their actions and behaviors. So if you look on the right side of the slide with the CBITS triangle, this is something that is used throughout the entire program and is introduced to the students during the first session. We have them take an example of one of their stress or trauma. And as an example for this, I'm going to use a student who was in a car accident. So we asked the student to start to process how their car accident might have changed the way they think about cars and things of that nature. So the student may say, I now think of cars as scary. I now think every time I'm getting into a car that I might get into an accident now. We also then ask them to look at how this may change their feelings. So before, they might have liked going for car rides, they might have found it enjoyable or fun. Now they may be saying that they feel nervous about cars. They feel fearful about getting into a car. And then finally, we would ask them to look at how this has impacted what they do. So at this point, they may avoid going for car rides as much as possible. They may choose to stay home rather than going on a family trip or shopping or something like that nature because they are so fearful of being in a car at this point. So this is something we use throughout the entire CBITS program. I wanted to take just a moment to talk about the most common traumas experienced by students who were enrolled in my CBITS groups in Northumberland County. These were the groups that were rolled out and implemented in spring 2022, and there were about 30 students in these groups. It ranged from middle school 6th grade to high school 11th grade, and it was a mix of male and female students. So the first one is sexual abuse, and we saw this with family members, family friends, and also significant others, especially for our high school students. The next common trauma that was experienced is witnessing a significant mental health or substance use. This typically occurred within the home by a parent or a sibling. Some of these included suicide attempts, overdoses, and criminal activity. The next one was domestic violence. This was most often parent to parent, but could also be parent to child, or could also include siblings or grandparents. The next one was significant loss. This most often was a parent. We had students who had lost parents due to suicide, murder, and overdose. We also had students who had experienced the loss of a grandparent. This was more often due to illness, such as COVID or cancer, as well as we had some students who had experienced the loss of a friend or a classmate. Finally, we had a more general category of other, and this included students who were experiencing homelessness, foster care, or court proceedings. So now let's talk about tips for teaching students who have been traumatized. The first one is to observe students' behavior through a trauma lens. What this is asking is that you're looking at the student behavior through everything we've just talked about and not taking it at face value. You're thinking of what the student may have experienced or what they've been through that may be leading to some of the behaviors you're seeing. You're especially looking for students who show patterns of behavior or maybe whose behavior has suddenly changed. The next one is creating a sense of consistency in your classroom. So when we have a student who's experienced a significant stress or trauma, they typically have experienced a lot of chaos within that time. Giving them a sense of consistency can help them start to heal and make things feel more safe for them. You can do this by having kind of a regular routine that you do within your classroom, or also letting students know ahead of time what your plan is for the day or for the week. The next one is allowing students to have or make choices when possible. So again, students who have experienced a significant stress or trauma typically feel like they've lost all control. They probably had no control during that situation, and they may feel now like the world, their life, everything is out of control. So if we can give them even very small choices and allow them to know that we value their thoughts and their choices when possible, can really help them start to heal. Something as small as choosing what color marker to use for the day, or where to sit if possible, or just small things of that nature can truly make a difference. The next one is understanding that students who have experienced trauma have distinct triggers that cause high anxiety. So this may mean that you may see a student who responds in a somewhat drastic manner when they might hear a certain word, or they might be asked to do a certain thing, or if somebody yells real loud, or a whole wide variety of distinct triggers. It is normal for these students to have these trauma responses to triggers after they've experienced something. And it is perfectly okay if you know that one of your students has had a difficult experience to just ask them, is there anything that, really causes a lot of anxiety or emotions for you that if I can avoid would help. It's perfectly okay to ask them that and have that conversation with them. A lot of times they can tell you what they may respond to. It's also great if you do see a student who is having a reaction to remove them from that situation. That's a helpful and safe thing to do. The next one, it can be helpful to warn students if you will be doing something out of the ordinary in your classroom. So this could be something as small as, maybe that you're going outside for the next day, or even something like turning out the lights. For some students, when the lights were turned off, that could be a scary, traumatic time for them. So just letting them know ahead of time that you're going to be doing things like that can help prepare them and help them to not feel so triggered when those types of things are happening. The last one is making sure that staff are aware of the symptoms of what we call vicarious traumatization or secondary trauma. Secondary trauma is a common thing that does happen to both individuals who work in the mental health field and also teachers and individuals who are working with larger groups of people on a daily basis. So you just want to be aware of the symptoms of secondary trauma because you can, if you don't get treatment for that, you can start to experience some symptoms of trauma yourself. So you want to seek out and support and consultation to prevent burnout or to prevent yourself from having and experiencing the secondary trauma. If you start to feel like you might be experiencing some of that, I highly recommend speaking to an administrator, a supportive teacher, or a mental health professional that works within your school district. So the next to last slide here is the contact information for the CBITS program that you just watched. So again, my name is Sarah Dobeck-Troutman. I was the presenter for today. I am a CBITS clinician and a trained facilitator. There is my email. If you'd like to reach out to me, you're more than welcome to. Our CBITS program director, who also oversees several other programs for Hempfield Behavioral Health, is Deb Schaefer. She's also available via email. There is our website, Hempfield Behavioral Health. That is the facility that offers the CBITS program in our local area. And finally, the Center for Resiliency, Hope, and Wellness in Schools website is where the CBITS program is located if you want to find out more information about the program. There's also several other trauma programs on that website that you can use, including ones that the student can work through themselves and classroom programs. And their website is traumaawareschools.org. On the final slide is a 10-minute video that I hope you'll take the time to watch. It's very powerful. It talks about the impact of trauma from a staff and student perspective. If for some reason the video will not play for you, it is located on the traumaawareschools.org website. Thank you. Here's the video.